Yo, 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 what is going on, CoD Familia? It is your boy BN, aka Mr. Kingdom Builder. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about, as a new player, or even someone who wants to restart, is it better to do it solo, by yourself, or in a very maybe small group? Or is it better to join a project that has 1, 2, 3, 4 plus alliances in it in order to get the best experience and the best start for yourself? Let's discuss. As always, if you enjoy the content, make sure you throw us up because it helps out a lot. So let's first start off talking about the solo opportunities. Now, some of the pros and cons here for starting off by yourself, and this is, I will say up front, I very much lean on starting in projects. So like between the two, I think it's overwhelmingly more beneficial to start off in a larger group slash project, because I just do believe there's a lot more inherent benefits where the pros do far outweigh the cons. However, as it pertains to solo, there are usually some reasons on why you would want to do this. Now, one can be maybe you're just opposed to groups. Maybe you just don't care for projects. You just want to go in and experience for yourself. Number two is that if you're someone who's spending money, then really for the most part, it probably doesn't really matter if you're in a project or not. The only difference is that if you're in a project, there can at times, it can be a little more likely that you'll also be paired with other people that spend, or be able to at least find other people than spend, where you might be able to have a little bit of a higher average amount of people that are spending in the kingdom if you join a project that's going to a kingdom compared to going solo. It may not always be the case, but I do, from my experience, I find that that happens a little bit more often than not. However, if you do plan to spend, then you'll still most likely be able to find yourself, in a top active alliance, or in the #1 alliance for that matter. If you are someone who is free to play, maybe low spend, some of the benefits are that maybe you are just totally fine with the chaos and just kind of seeing how things play out in the kingdom. You don't really care kind of who's #1, who's #2, who's #3. You don't really care kind of who's in control. You just want to be able to kind of play and let your activity kind of dictate you being able to make it into active alliances, as long as everything's kind of, ran semi-efficiently and well in the kingdom. As a solo player, you, especially if, for example, maybe there isn't time. Maybe another reason is that there's no group or project that's starting when you want to start. Another benefit of going solo is that you also get some firsthand experience on seeing how the early stages of development are. And then you can kind of figure out from there, well, okay, do I want to continue this account? Or am I only doing this until a project starts? Or you know what, I'm enjoying my time so far. I don't really see anything inherently bad or any red flags within the kingdom. I'm just going to keep playing. Some of the challenges with starting off solo, I guess I'll say another challenge, is that when you are starting off solo, you are pretty much by yourself, right? Or you're in a very, very, very small group. And so you don't really have any kind of deterrence to an extent, depending on how much you're spending or not, where you could really kind of have a say in things, or like really have your voice heard in a bigger way compared to if you're in an organized group, right, where it's a little bit easier, or you would hope, I should say, it would be easier to provide things like feedback or criticism or suggestions as an example, or ideas. Whereas if you're joining solo by yourself and you're just going into an alliance where kind of like no one really knows each other, sure, you may still have opportunities for that to happen, but at the same time, you may also have opportunities or lack of opportunities to kind of speak and say those things. Whereas if you're a part of a group, everyone kind of understands that you're kind of already a part of the team, right? You're kind of already, not to say you're insulated, but you're already adept, right? You've already kind of been made, I'm not aware, what's the right word I'm trying to find here? You're already kind of in it, is a good way of saying, right? Where you're kind of in the club. You're already in the club, compared to where if you're solo and you're joining Alliance, you're not really kind of in their club, right? Because you didn't like jump with them and prep with them. You're just kind of joining, right, all these other people at the first time joining, most likely, if it is just one of those alliances. Then, in addition to you being solo, to whether or not, you might have as much of a say, the challenge is that you also may not have a lot of protection, because you don't know, protection in the sense of that you don't know how the kingdom is going to play out, or the general direction that it's going to go in, where there's a little bit more of a learning curve in that sense when you're solo compared to joining a project. The next one, and probably the last one for me, when you're solo is that you also don't have as much, or you may, I should say this, you have a lower percentage chance of not having or having lower socialization and interaction and engagement compared to if you're already joining a large group that is boasting a lot of social engagement already and interaction and community feeling. That could be kind of a longing or a missed area that you may not really be able to get depending on how the kingdom plays out, as it still could very well, but it's just, in my experience, a little bit of a lower percentage. And then if we talk about projects, so let's say you join a project. There are a number of benefits, and as I said in the beginning, I very much lean in favor of you as an individual player looking to join a project, and that mainly is because of a number of things. One, you'll get hopefully a number of resources early on, organized resources, where things are kind of already there for you, or they should be, compared to if you're solo, you may have to go and look these things up individually. Whereas if you join a project in a Discord server, you just might already have things out there for you in kind of a nice outline format. Like I have one for my project that I'm running right now where we're just focusing on recruiting leaders for. But on my Discord, on our jumper category or section, we have a channel that says like CoD P resources, and it's just an outline of like all the most important resources that you would need, even if I think it still needs to be updated a bit. But that's kind of the idea, the hope that you would have something there in a project you're joining where they kind of have everything for you in a one-stop shop channel. The next benefit is that you get to go with a lot of people. And so if you're going with a lot of people, the chances for that project's success are already a lot higher than what your day-to-day experiences or expectations may be as a solo, because it is a little bit different. You're going in hoping that your daily experience is going to be great and you're going to get the most out of it because you're joining a project where there's a lot of people. Things are hopefully a little bit more structured and organized. You also have a chance to get off to a better start because you get a lot more information earlier on compared to solo, and then you're just kind of like figuring things out. The next one is that when you're in a larger project, you also have a lot more power and a lot more bodies available. So this can act in large aspects as a passive deterrent against other players or alliances from kind of roguing it up on the kingdom, where they just kind of want to fight or maybe are more inclined to fight, right? If you have, it's kind of like walking out onto the schoolyard with the biggest bat or with the biggest posse, the biggest group, right? It's just less likely that people may mess with you or may mess with people in the kingdom that would affect the overall total activity population from the player base. In addition, it also reduces the amount of player drop-off, the less likely it is that unnecessary fights or wars break out. Another benefit of joining a project as well is that usually, if you have a lot of people, you typically can start off in multiple regions or Zone 1 regions. This really kind of goes more onto the structuring and the organization, but really speaks to things like flexibility and being adaptable. Meaning that if something was to happen, as an example, in one region, and maybe you need to move, right, you'll have some of those opportunities, or to be assisted and supported, right, from adjacent regions as well. And this is something that, again, starting in a big group just kind of lends itself to giving you a little bit more security. And I would argue a little bit more comfortability in that regard. Now, some of the cons for being in a group is what I think are just some of the obvious ones, is that you just need to do your research. You need to apply some due diligence and make sure that you're joining multiple projects, multiple groups, and then you're reading through all of them. You're seeing how much the leadership and the management team interact, if those have been announced at that time, and kind of getting a feel for it, right? What's the standards that are being set? What's the tone? What's the expectations? Does it feel like the project you're in or any of the projects have good structuring? Do they have a plan laid out? Like, these are things that if you join multiple and you look through all the channels they have, you'll start to kind of notice common denominators, similarities between them, but always join multiple because you want to try to put yourself in the best position based on what you want or what you would like to try and get out of a project you're joining. The next one is that, and this is something I think is just kind of more of a generalization, but keep in mind that just because you're joining a project does not mean that every single project is going to be 100% successful. Even though joining a project does increase the chances, and the larger the project, in my opinion, the larger the chances of success. However, anything can happen, right? That's just something to always keep in mind. And that can be anything from, excuse me. You could have, like, super whales or krakens that come up. You could have alliances that band together. There could be a rogue alliance that joins, and all they want to do is just cause havoc. I mean, any number of things. You could have betrayals that happen, coup d'etats, whatever it may be, right? Big players that are with you, but then they leave and want to now all of a sudden start fighting. I mean, anything and everything you can imagine in a project could happen. So there are some cons there, but those cons are, in my view, are kind of up to chance, but also can have a higher percentage of that chance happening, also factoring into like how well you're ran, how well you're organized, how well you're structured. A lot of things can happen internally as well. Another con I would say for projects is that as a project, especially depending on how large you are, the larger you are, it also requires kind of more hands or more attention. So this can very much be something where if you're someone as a player who likes to give feedback, or you like to give suggestions, or you like to kind of talk shop, depending on how that project is ran, you may or may not get opportunities to do so. And so even though that may not really be a deal breaker for maybe some people, others, it may be something that you really value. Depending on the kind of social community, or if you're hoping to kind of get a lot of that out of a project that you're joining. I think for the most part that probably covers a good bit as far as pros and cons for solos versus groups. I will just conclude and end this with one. Again, I didn't cover everything as far as going super into detail. I just kind of wanted to touch on some highlighted points that I've experienced, and also that if you are starting out as a new player or restart player, and you're looking to even get into something like jumping, right? There are a lot of projects that you can go and find, which will be on the official CoD Discord. And if you just go to new restart projects, you'll see a tab here under recruitment. I have a section on my Discord as well. So if you go and join mine and you go to reaction roles, you will select Call of Dragons. And I have one where you'll see people that I have CoD project ads. Right? And this is for basically kind of jumper recruitment or projects if you want to go and find those. However, like I said, I still am very much a big believer that projects and joining groups is always going to be a better overall experience compared to just kind of going solo. And keep in mind, there's always projects that are usually going to be running. It just depends on, of course, when they will start. But there's nothing wrong with starting earlier, even as a solo, as I mentioned before. Especially if it's just to get some early experience, even if you have the intent of wanting to join a project, but you're just kind of starting now, so you can kind of click, read through, see how the early game progression looks, and then kind of make your decision from there. Of course, I would love to hear from those of you, right? Do you value going solo or in a small group versus joining a project more? Or would you rather join a project more so than going solo or as a group? And I'd love to hear what you guys think or what your pros and cons are for doing each. Hopefully this helps you, especially if you're just starting out or you're just finding Call of Dragons, because I wish I knew these things when I first started playing Kingdom Builders earlier on, right, compared to finding these things out later. With that being said, that's going to do it for me. As always, until next time, I'll catch y'all later.